Every night is game night, episode 94. Thanos Rising, now boarding, and improve your play for Ghost Stories. Hey everybody, welcome back to Every Night is Game Night. This is Anthony, once again with Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
All right, guys, we have game reviews.
Back to our bread and butter, man. Sometimes you just gotta, give the people what they want.
Exactly. Yeah. No, we have a couple recent releases that we both had a chance to play, and we're going to talk about what we think of those games. And then Jason's going to hit you up with another Improve Your Play segment for a game that I cannot offer advice for at all. So.
Very few people can. We are talking about Ghost Stories. When we first came up with the Improve Your Play segment, we started with Terraforming Mars, had a lot of fun with that. At that, I actually started because I wanted to learn how to play. So I just did a bunch of research and did it. And then had some good feedback about it. So I was like, all right, let's just come up with more and more games to, come up with strategy guides for. And this one just shot to the top of the list because people always say this is old tech. Like there hasn't been an expansion for this game in like 3 years. People are still playing it. They're still like, oh my, I can't beat this thing. And, to this day. So there is hope.
Yeah.
It is beatable. I have beaten it at all player counts because I do play a lot of it. So we'll look at. I got a friend of mine to pop on the pod. I'm gonna let you let that be a surprise. So we'll just run through these recent co-ops and then get into the Improve Your Play. But first, we are going to get back to talking with Liz. Liz is going to hit us up with yet another Kickstarter. This is really, really funny because we are recording this episode way ahead of time.
Yeah.
This episode is going to hit in July, where we're recording on like June 4th or something. So there is not a chance on God's green earth that we will ever know what Liz will be talking about. But as we like to say, in Liz we trust. Go for it, Liz. All right, yet another awesome game from Liz, I have no doubt. Cool. All right, so now we are going to get back to the meat of the episode. Like Anthony said, we, sometimes it's just cool to get back to our roots and just talk about some games that have hit our table recently. All co-ops, because that's what we do in the Soloverse. There's most of the games we talk about are co-ops. Eventually, Anthony is storing up an entire Anthony Gets Heavy segment again. You're getting there, right? Are you going to build up some steam for that?
Yeah, man, it's midsummer almost. We're getting there. I think we'll probably have an overload here in a little bit if we don't do one. So it's coming.
Awesome. All right. So first, it'll be Thanos Rising.
All right. So Thanos Rising, guys. This is a game at, I think, 2 weeks before the Avengers dropped. So it is very much a movie tie-in. And most people have that kind of thing in the back of their head. We're like, movie tie-in. Ugh. I do too. But then there was a little bit of buzz around the game. So I definitely wanted to track it down and give it a go. It's from USAopoly, and they've been putting out some halfway decent games of late. They did the Harry Potter deck builder. They did, actually, I think it's the same designer as this game as a Harry Potter deck builder. They also did the Thing, Infection at Outpost 30, whatever. So they've had a nice string of games that have been based on other properties that have been pretty good. So came in with high hopes on this one. In the game, you're going to be fighting against Thanos and his minions. So you have kind of the generic minions as well as the 4 generals that you see in the movie. And then Thanos himself is this gigantic miniature, which I know that sounds silly, but it's this big old piece of plastic that you put in the middle of the board, and he turns around to these different quadrants that you'll be placing cards into. And that's how you determine who he hits, when he hits them, how he activates the different generals, etc. So you're going to start the game with one of several different teams. There are 4 in the box, and you pick whichever ones you're going to start with, and then you lay the starting cards in front of you. And each of these cards is going to tell you which dice you're going to roll when it's your turn, and maybe there'll be some special abilities on them as well. The central space of the board is Thanos, and then there's a ring of cards around him, which you're just going to draw off the deck. And the deck consists of the bad guys and other Avengers that you can purchase, but also will have to save. And each of these good guy cards has a number of hit spots on them, and you're going to be placing cubes on there to determine how much damage they take. They can take damage before you buy them, and you can still lose the game if they die and you have not purchased them. So these are important things to keep in mind. And then there's a separate little board with the Infinity Gauntlet and all the gems, and they are going to slowly but surely power up and then join the gauntlet. When they do, he gets more powers. And the way that works is on every turn, you're going to roll a die for Thanos, and it's going to tell you which of his abilities he's going to activate, but also which of the different cubes you're going to put out for each of the different Infinity Stones. So the once he actually gets some of the gems, those die rolls do different things that hurt even more. So not a good thing necessarily, as one would imagine. So the game moves along fairly quickly. On your turn, you're going to roll your dice. Thanos is going to do his thing. You're going to move your marker to one of the different quadrants. If Thanos is facing you, it's going to hurt. If he's not, it might be okay. It depends on what he activates. And then based on your die rolls, you're going to try to attack the different enemies that are out there on the board based on the quadrant you're in, and also recruit other people to your cause based on the symbols that they have at the bottom of their cards. And so each of the dice has different types of symbols. There's red ones and blue ones and purple ones and green ones, and they kind of correspond to the different types of characters. So you've got your fists and you've got your little magic symbols, and I don't remember what they all are, but there's a lot of different symbols that represent different powers and types of powers in the Marvel Universe. The game is fairly quick. I mean, it does bog down a little bit in the middle just because you're kind of cycling through and trying to build up, your own little pool so you can go out and get new cards and build up more of a pool and go out and get more cards. And then at the same time, you're trying to keep the heroes from dying. Because if 10 total heroes die, which sounds like a lot, but they could start dying fairly quickly, you lose. If he gets all the Infinity Stones, you also lose. And if any one team dies, so of the players themselves, if they die, you lose. As if you're playing it solo, if you die, you lose. Although you'll probably be playing with multiple teams to kind of balance it out. So the actual win condition is fairly simple. You have to beat 7 of Thanos' minions. It's an interesting win mechanic because the way the deck is stacked, you might not face all the generals to do that. But you can also decide, I need to face all the generals to do that. So it's kind of up to you how many of the minions you want to defeat. There's a certain number in the deck, so you can just go higher if you want it to be harder. I thought it was decent. I didn't think it was amazing. I'm not a co-op guy in general, but I didn't dislike it. But it was hard to divorce the theme from the game. It's a theme I enjoy, and that big miniature was really cool to look at. So played through it a couple times, and I was like, this is fun. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I was like, I feel like this could be stronger. So it's kind of a middle of the road for me at this point.
I haven't got a chance to play this a ton. Very, very few plays. I want to get more, but I wasn't attracted to more plays. It's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I'm a huge Marvel nerd. I read the original Infinity Gauntlet when it came out, that 6-issue series and everything. So I was really into it. Thanos is my favorite villain ever of anything. So I was so excited when I saw this and I played it. It's give me that same feeling as Harry Potter. I mean, it's a little too long.
Yeah.
It kind of has that kind of fat middle, you were talking about. And I don't know. It again, family weight. I guess if you're playing it with your kid, is this where this is eventually a game that you can play with your kid who likes Marvel, and that's kind of what the best that we could hope for.
I think so. Yeah, and I didn't want it to be, but I had the exact same thought. I want to play it more to see if it opens up a little, but at the same time, I'm not really attracted to play it more. It's just sitting there, and I'm like, I guess. It's not... I think you're spot on. It's way too long in the middle. I've had a couple of issues where frequently one team will end up getting very powerful, and then the other teams will not, which imbalances the game a little bit because you got one really awesome turn, but you can only do so much on that one turn, and then the other turns are just trying to stay alive. Which is a bit of an issue. And then, it doesn't really get difficult either unless you ramp it up. So the starting difficulty is not that tough unless you get some really bad dice rolls. It is dice, so dice can go poorly. But then you ramp it up and it makes the game longer and not necessarily harder, just the possibility that it becomes harder because of the dice rolls. So I feel like it could use some clipping in there in the middle to fix that issue.
Yeah, I'll play more because I'm that much of an Avengers geek. But if this was like a DC game, I think I'll move on.
Yeah.
Like if it was the Joker pointing at you, I'm not as big a DC guy. Or if it was, Lobo or something, I think I'd move on. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I've seen several reviews of this where people are like, I give it a 7.5. If it wasn't Marvel, I'd give it a 5. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of extra points for theme. It's not...
and a giant Thanos mini.
Yeah, it's so big. It's not
awesome.
Yeah,
we wish he had a better recommendation for that, but that was Thanos Rising. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta well.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I think if you go back 10 or 15 years and you look at the quality of like the movie tie-ins that came out, this is much better than those, but it's still not as good as it could be considering what it is.
Right. Cool. So that was Thanos Rising. So here's a game. Get ready for a disagreement because I'll just let you describe it. So this one is a recently delivered Kickstarter from Tim Fowers, and when Tim Fowers delivers a Kickstarter, it is definitely worth pricking up your ears and checking it out. They're not always the best games in the world, but there's always an interesting take on stuff. So this one is the real-time cooperative airplane game called Now Boarding. Yes,
and so I will say up front that I do like this game, but we'll get to where we disagree, I guess. So Now Boarding is a game in which you are trying to move passengers around this map. And each passenger is represented by a card. On the back, it tells you where they start. On the front, it tells you where they're trying to go, and then you get a certain amount of money if you get them there. The trick to it is that your airline is limited in how they can get to different places. So when you start the game, you can travel on two different kinds of routes. You can travel on your routes based on which airline you have, and then the open routes. And then you'll be able to buy upgrades that allow you to go on different routes as well. You also have a limited amount of length you can go along the map. So I think you start with 3, and then you can upgrade that as well so that you can go more distance and get between different cities. And the goal of the game is to kind of plan it out and, basically you'll sit and stare at the board for a few minutes and decide what the most efficient possible options are based on what's available to you. And then the real-time element comes in when you flip it over, turn all those passenger cards face up to see where they need to go, and then try to make it all happen based on what's available to you. As you deliver passengers to their final destinations, you will get that money and be able to purchase additional upgrades. You can get new seats. You can get new routes. You can get new speed. There's also some temporary seats and speed if you really needed something right away. There's much cheaper. And the real kicker here is if you ignore a passenger, don't pick them up, don't do anything with them on their particular turn, they're going to get these complaint cubes. And the complaint cubes, as they add up, are going to represent a possible way to lose the game. So if 4 cubes gets onto a card, they go to the side, they gave up, they're renting a car, they're just going to drive. And if 3 of those passengers...
Does it say that in the rules? They rent a car?
Yeah, I think it does, actually, yeah. Or maybe it was in the video they did. They have a video on their website. But either way, I'm not taking credit for that one. If 3 of those people give up and run out of the airport and they're just too pissed off to move on, then you lose the game. So that's the trick. You're trying to keep people juggled. If they're in the airplane, they're happy. All the cubes come off. You pick them up and then drop them off, one stop later, this timer resets. And then they start building up complaint cubes fresh. The timer itself is fairly short. And I'm interested to hear how you play this solo because there aren't actual solo rules in the game. I've just been playing it as a 2-player. But that's 15 seconds, and then the longer version is 30 seconds. And I feel like as the game went along further and I got more distance, that 30-second timer looked very nice to me. So it was a little tough to get everything done in 15 seconds while moving 2 planes around.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I use 30-second timer for solo, and I'm able... it took me a while, so, there'd be times where it's I'm not quite done. There's a lot of upkeep, because you're flipping the cards and you have to put the cubes on and, changing out the passengers and stuff. I had to get good at doing all of those switches within the 30 seconds. So that was, a little bit of practice there. Plus, I could have done it faster if I just like chucked the cards and like left a big pile during the real time phase. So I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
That is not happening. So yeah, I allowed myself a little time just to like, place the card nicely and everything. But I eventually got good enough to do it in the 30 seconds. Okay, so did you play with the VIPs?
No, I haven't.
Aha, there you go. So the game's a little bit boring without the VIPs. So
right.
The VIPs, so this is a variant that's in the back, and I consider this the real game, honestly. So the VIPs in the back there. So Anthony was describing the passengers, so they kind of get connected to these little airports. What the VIPs do, they kind of quote unquote buff the passenger. So they come out and you realize that this passenger is a crying baby, and every other passenger in the airport increases in anger. So, or captured prisoner. So like they take 2 seats instead of 1 seat. So in the 2-player game, which is what I did. I play solo. I play two-handed basically. You get 4 of these to deal with throughout the game. So, a 2 in the morning, 1 in the evening, or 1 in the evening, 2 in the afternoon, whatever, however it works out. You get to know who the people are, so you kind of know what is kind of coming. But it really changes things up, because let's say you have the airplane is in the perfect position, it's going to get it, and then boom, the +1 seat thing, the captured prisoner comes out, and it's like, oh man, and it really makes you rethink your strategy. You're switching yourself into a pretzel, kind of redoing your planes. The essence of the game is coordinating the planes. Like you can't just you can't focus. You can't just like sit there and go, I'm gonna go to San Francisco, then I'm gonna go to JFK. You can't do that. You have to meet up. You have to coordinate, those 2 different planes, and you have to make sure they stay in their little zones and they coordinate effectively. And the VIP passengers just throw such a delicious wrinkle into it. I was with you. I was kind of like, okay, this is all right, fine. Once I threw in those VIPs, I will never play without them. I really won't.
Yeah, I got to give it a go. I mean, because like I said, I didn't dislike the game. One, I felt like it was like, from what you described, probably just need to play it more, but it felt almost more like a dexterity game than a strategy game, because I'm like, I got to get these cubes off, and I could do this and this and this. Like, you feel like at least 40% of what you're doing during the 30 seconds that you have is upkeep, which is frustrating.
Right.
But at the same time, it's the real-time element almost feels like a patch on the game. Like, you can't just give people unlimited time, because they'll just solve it, right? Like, oh, this is the way to best do this. You need to limit the time to make sure people can't just sit there and figure it out, right? But I don't know. It just didn't feel like a necessary part of it, because everything else is in normal time. You get to spend as much time as you want thinking about what upgrades you want and staring at the map and determining how long you want to take to, what do we think we're going to do? And I don't know what guys are coming out, and I don't know.
It reminds me of Flatline. If people have played that, where there's a planning phase, and the planning phase can take as long as you want, and you can kind of share resources, and then there's that kind of shot of very timing. In Flatline, I think it was like a couple minutes. In this game, it's only 30 seconds or 15 seconds, however you do it. I thought it worked. I liked it. I liked it because, like, I got good at it. Once I got good at it, like, how to kind of take the shortcut and, account for the different, flipping the cars and all that kind of stuff. You get better at it. I tell you, solo. In 2 players, it's not a problem. It is not a problem. Just do it, and you either enjoy it or you don't. Like, but I really do think the VIP passengers added that extra layer of strategy that made the planning phase just everything that a solo player wants. What does a solo player want to do? They want to look at their game board. They want to puzzle stuff out, figure out, like, they want the puzzle to look really hard and like, how am I going to do this? And then it opens up, like a move opens up, and it's like, oh, this game does that in a really cute thematic way. I can imagine, people, like you were saying before, they just give up and drive.
Yeah.
The crying baby, it makes sense that he makes the other passengers angrier, and the celebrity has to fly alone. So you have this giant plane, 3-seater, he's full of play, and all of a sudden this obnoxious celebrity shows up like, nope, everybody out. I'm flying alone, and you have to coordinate all that. Oh, the theme is amazing. The VIP cars make a huge difference. The real time is doable. I've played this game solo, a little bit of co-op with some friends, but I still come back to it. I'll play it tonight. I'll just go upstairs doing it right now. I love this game. Oh my, I can't tell you guys. It is so nice to just be able to say, I'm digging this game. I do acknowledge that if you're not into that real time stuff, if you think this is too simple a puzzle, you might not enjoy it, but it is that sweet spot for me. Oh my goodness. Theme is awesome. The puzzle is satisfying. Play with the VIPs. Oh my God. That is, all right. That's enough. Hose me down.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a funny thing because like before we recorded this episode, you're like, oh, what'd you think? And I'm like, it's all right. And you're like, what? So...
Now I know why you didn't play with the VIPs.
There you go.
You were describing stuff, I'm like, oh, he didn't play it.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna get back out and play with the VIPs, and it's one of those things where I never start with the variants in a game, and I'm like, well, if the game's not good without them, then. But I just hadn't gotten that far. I will say this: theme is great. I do like it a lot. You know, you never think you're gonna have fun with a game about moving people between airports, but that artwork, the Goldberry artwork that just makes these Fowers games come alive, really, really works with this theme. I'm always astounded. Like they seem to pick the perfect types of games and layouts and themes that match that artwork style, and this one definitely hits the sweet spot there. And I do, yeah, I mean, I want to like it. It's one of those games I'm like, I want to like it. There's a lot of really cool decisions to be made here, but it might just be a matter of, like you said, the VIPs and playing it enough so that all that upkeep doesn't feel like a chore.
As a solo, it's not printed on the box, so it's not like recommended to play it that way. This just happens to hit my sweet spot. I do like real time games. I like Escape. I like Fuse. There's a bunch of them. Space Alert. So this hits my wheelhouse there. The theme is cute, so I made it work. But buyer beware. I don't know if you're going to be, Anthony, a person that is going to resonate with this solo. I just felt like the real time stuff works and the planning works. Everything just kind of came. It was like a perfect storm for me. So if I can definitely understand if other people are like, not deep enough, too easy, da 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 da. So
Yeah, I don't think it's too easy at all. I definitely think it's difficult. I have yet to want to win, so that's for sure. Yeah, I think your glowing review, and I do like the game. So, and it's a real time co-op, so that says something, people. That's not.
Definitely. All right, so that is Now Boarding by Tim Fowers. Glowing recommendation. Play with those VIPs. Okay, so we are going to get to our feature segment right now, which is Improve Your Play, Ghost Stories. Hey everybody, this is Jason. I'm back with you. As promised, we are going to talk about ghost stories. We are going to do an Improve Your Play segment. So I have asked a person who really, really enjoys ghost stories. If you heard our episode a couple weeks ago, he mentioned it. So I'm like, let me reach out. And let's just talk some strategy. Let's see if what this guy's win rate is. So this is Mike Mullins.
Thank you so much for having me back. I love ghost stories. I'm happy to do it.
You love ghost stories. Do you win ghost stories?
Well, win is a. I have won ghost stories. Anybody that tells you they win ghost stories all the time is a liar.
Yes,
it's notoriously hard for a reason. It's I once saw this great little book of collected designer advice. So someone was doing it for a fundraiser. They walked around, they had people sign their names and give a piece of advice for their game, right? The advice in the book for ghost stories was, if you're playing as Wu Fang, sit back and enjoy. So basically, the designer was just saying, ha ha, in his how to win. Oh, I loved it so much.
However, there are things to do and there are things to avoid. So we are going to give you the best possible chance to squeeze a win out. We are not experts, obviously. I don't win ghost stories on a regular basis, and neither does Mike. But at least we'll give you guys a leg up so that you avoid some pretty obvious mistakes. Is that I think we share in that experience of watching somebody play ghost stories and going, "Oh God."
Oh yeah, you just wince.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Cool. So we're going to break this pod into 3 parts. We're going to evaluate the characters. We're going to evaluate the tiles themselves and then give some general gameplay tips. However, I wanted to open up with a discussion of what the rulebook says is the setup rules for how to play. So according to the rules, you must do full random. on the tiles. So there's 9 tiles, and spoiler alert, when we get to the tiles, they're really imbalanced. There are some tiles that are must use, you must use them as soon as you get them, and there's some tiles that are complete waste of space that might as well be blank. And, it's some kind of variation in routine. So obviously the layout of the tiles, so like, the 9x9 grid, if you lay them out randomly, depending on how they work out, it can either be very advantageous or just a complete, whatever show. Mm-hmm. So same thing with characters. You're supposed to kind of choose the characters randomly, but I love the color yellow, so give me yellow. That's just the way it is. Right. I don't care what it is. But so you're going to get some people on BGG especially saying, well, if you don't choose randomly, then you're playing it wrong and you're cheating and your wins are not valid if you choose the opening layout. So before we even get to the assessment of what everything does, what do you think of that perspective?
Well, so if I went to the store and bought a basketball, I don't have to find 9 other people and an official and play, 4 quarters and keep score. I can shoot around in my backyard. And I feel the same way about every single game you get. House rule whatever you want. Play however you want. Enjoy the thing, right? So and that's just a basic philosophical principle, but it goes even further in Ghost Stories for me because the game's notoriously hard. And the more you play, the more you understand the value of certain tiles. And so it seems ludicrous to me to not say, okay, well, I want to make sure that if I'm playing solo or 2-player, my Buddha tile is going to be in the middle because then I can go collect my neutral tokens and my Buddha tokens in the same turn. Or just how, you begin to acquire certain strategies. To me, that's half the fun. Half the fun is getting better at the game. Mm-hmm. So you should absolutely feel free to make those selections, whether you're playing it with the app that allows you to, or you're setting up the physical game at home. Be better, have fun, employ some thought. Mm-hmm. I get that that's not the rules as written, but who are you trying to impress,
Yeah, and plus, Ghost Stories came out in 2012. The app is old, the game is old, it hasn't been updated in a little while. I think, co-ops and randomness have kind of developed over the years, I think, where, so I'm thinking of Arkham Horror. What a randomness.
Yeah, for sure.
The game doesn't care. I think the sensibility has kind of developed to the point where, more and more games, more and more, I guess in the older version, you played a lot. So, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, the luck kind of evened out. I think with all the games now, you get a couple cracks at it. So, you're going to lay out Ghost Stories and you don't win, and there's going to be 50 other games that are there waiting for you to be played. And just basically the same game night. So, I think, on a game night where people are looking at your shelf going, oh my God, I want to play all these things. You want to try to give people the best experience. And so laying out the tiles in a certain way that you find fun or you find effective or whatever it is, why not?
Absolutely. And you just, the 2 single best words to describe this issue are best experience. Give the people the best experience. You nailed it. Maybe the best experience for you is true random. That's awesome. But, just don't yuck somebody else's yum if they like to rearrange the tiles in a certain way or... I've even
yuck seen... somebody else's yum? I've never heard that. What is that?
It's just when someone says, hey, I love this, then you don't turn around and say, that's dumb and you're dumb for liking it.
Okay.
That's don't let people love things is the way you might have heard that. Don't yuck somebody else's yum. Mm-hmm. But I've also seen sort of a hybrid where it's okay, you can, you set up the 9 tiles randomly and you can change 2 tiles. Mm-hmm. So, somewhere in between, you do whatever you want. I don't know. To me, that seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I just want to honor people because we do have some people who listen on BGG and they're really dedicated to the rules say this, you must play random. I honestly think that is a result of kind of an older way of approaching games where you played games a lot. And I think if your group plays Ghost Stories a lot, then yes, that might add a little bit of spice to have the randomness. So you don't fall into a groove. But that's not the experience that people are having with Ghost Stories. Nowadays, especially, it's I'm going to throw this down. You got one shot. Just do the best experience. Have the most organized play, and then just go for it. So that's kind of where I am with that.
Yeah, and to speak to the same concept of enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. If your thing is to be a rules lawyer and to play rules as written, and to your score only counts if X, awesome for you. Do it that way. Good luck, have fun, do it that way, But you can't then go around saying that your way is the only way just because that's how it was written 6 years ago. if the next version came out, I could easily see that rule being updated. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's an archaic rule, like you point out. It's sort of an artifact of, here, let's just set this up quickly. Let's eliminate some player choice, get this to the table faster, and just do it random.
Ghost Story Second Edition. Oh, where is it? Where is it?
Oh my gosh, I would be at my house as soon as possible.
all over it. We both love this game. Okay, so let's get into some improve your play strategy talk. So let's evaluate the different tiles. So we alluded to the fact that not every tile is created equal. I think there are a couple of tiles that rise above. That number for me is 3 of the tiles. Is that the same number that you have that are like essential, use these all the time, or do you have a couple more?
Well, I generally feel that strategy evolves as you play, and a lot of people fear the costly tiles. I don't fear them quite as much, but I think there's kind of 3 tiers of tiles. I could say
that's a good point. So I'm thinking of the top tier of tile that's good all the time. No cost. It's just the only cost is opportunity using the space, and if you use that space, you can't attack or whatever it is. Sure. So I think it's the Buddhist temple with the 2 Buddhas. I think it's the herbalist shop where you can get 2 random Dao tokens, and the circle of prayer where you can set basically a common color that counts towards every time you defeat one of those monsters. Is that how you line it up? Those are like the big ones you should use all the time?
Oh, absolutely. And I might even go a step further just to say that the Buddha Temple and the Circle of Prayer are the absolute 2 best. Certainly just cashing in and getting free tokens are great, but because they're random, it just knocks it that 1 step down lower than the ultimate top tier for me are the Buddhist Temple and the Circle of Prayer. You activate that thing early, so you're always getting that bonus. You update it when you need to. And, speaking back to our rearranging things, the Buddha Temple is always my center square.
Right.
So as you're using the neutral tokens in a less than full game, neutral tokens are accumulating there. You go back, you pick up your neutral tokens. If you're playing blue, you grab both Buddhas, and then you're just loaded. You're completely reloaded. So.
Okay, so then what's your next tier of tiles that are like somewhat useful depending on the situation?
Well, I think one of the most underrated tiles is the Pavilion of the Heavenly Winds, where you can move a ghost, but you also get to move your Taoist. I think people forget how useful that actually is. So you can push a ghost into, and another basic strategy is to put ghosts on corners so that you can attack 2 at a time, or exercise 2 at a time, right? So you can move a ghost to a corner, you can move it onto a Buddha, you can move it onto the green player's board so they don't have to roll the curse die. It's insanely versatile, and then you also get to move your Taoist. That puts it actually pretty close to the top tier for me. It's not top because it is situational. You need to have a ghost you want to move. But it's pretty darn close to the top tier for how useful it is.
I would also put the Sorcerer's Hut on there. So then I guess the Sorcerer's Hut and the Tea House are the 2 that you talk about in terms of doing an awesome effect but having a cost. So the Sorcerer's Hut makes you lose a life to kill a monster, and the Tea House you gain a life and a random token, but you have to draw a card. So those are ones that I see newer players they're like, oh, I'm not gonna. They're gonna avoid a Tea House, but they might. There's always one player that spams a Sorcerer's Hut is like, oh, I'm just going to use this and kill monsters. It's like, no, that's not going to work. So a lot of misuse on that. I think a good player is going to understand what the timing is on those 2.
Right. And specifically for me, the Tea House, because you're looking at a singular win condition, which is to defeat, a certain number of aspects of Wu Fang, depending on what difficulty level you're playing, right? You have to defeat this big ghost. Other ghosts don't matter. So if you have the space on your player boards to fill in extra ghosts, you want to use that Tea House, okay? This sort of ties into the other point that I want to make is that new players view their chi as life, and they you don't get hit in fighting games. You can score a perfect if you never get hit. No way, not in this game. You want to spend those chi to knock monsters out, to use the Tea House. Don't be afraid of losing chi. Especially because then you can go ahead and use the Tea House to grab a token of any color. That's the other thing that's special there. Is it's not a random roll. It's of any color. So get your chi back. And then the penalty is to get you closer to victory. people view that drawing a ghost as a really bad thing, and sometimes it is, especially when ghosts come into play, and all of a sudden you put like 4 ghosts in a turn because they all say give an extra ghost. Mm-hmm. But really, that penalty is pretty darn mild for what it actually has for power.
Yeah, and it needs to. I find to use the pavilion and use the tea house, the Buddha has to be in play. Like, just to be able to combo those things. If you get an extra ghost, it's going to summon more. Just lay it on a Buddha. Up the pavilion, you can slide ghosts onto the. But that Buddha is just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the short version is the Buddha should always be in play. You should, you certainly have to prioritize walking around and make sure you're taking care of your haunting and tormenting ghosts. Like, you do have to prioritize certain things. But that's where your, like, for example, your blue ability lets you do both to petition a villager and to exercise comes into play, where you can, grab a token somewhere or use something else and then also exercise. That's a big helpful one to get that Buddha in play and get it back going whenever you can.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the ones that are, like, to put it kind, situational, but mostly, whatever. The cemetery, that's there if you need it. If a Taoist dies, if you're using that, then you're kind of screwed anyway.
Right.
The Taoist altar, I mean, that's the one where you can unhaunt a tile and summon a random ghost. I'd probably use my yin yang token for that as opposed to using the Taoist altar, depending on the setup. But it's not a great tile.
It's not a great tile, especially because you have to get to it, right? So the only time that I specifically use the herbalist shop are when I'm using a villager's ability from afar. Using my yin yang to be able to, use a distant villager's ability, so I don't have to actually be there. Or if there's somebody that I'm really trying to knock out. I'm sorry, I said herbalist shop. It's the altar. The only time I'm going to use that altar is if I am on there fighting a ghost that I have to fight, and I have my blue character, so I can do both things. But yeah, I usually use my yin yang for that particular ability.
And then the Night's Watchman. Oh, jeez. Oh no! I may have used that thing once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one that. So these lowest tiers, they go if you're doing your own personal setup and not randomizing. These should be going in the middle spaces on the outsides of boards, right? You want to prioritize your good stuff on the corners because you want to go to the corners, be able to exercise both ghosts there. So sort of your best tiles go in sort of an X pattern, in my personal opinion. And so these weaker tiles go in the middle of the other sides. And so without a doubt, Night Watchman is always in the middle. And usually for me, it's in the middle of not my board. It's in the middle of a non-player board. Because I don't want to go there if I don't have to.
It's funny because there are some people who say that you could put the good tiles in the middle spaces because of how the movement works. So, like, let's say you're on the bottom and you don't have. We'll get to the characters in a second, but for whatever reason you can't like fly across the board. Like, at least if you're going from bottom to middle to top, you'll be able to pass by a decent space. Whereas if they're in the corners, then you're kind of stuck there. So that's kind of how other players approach it.
Yeah, well, for me, because I spend my time pushing ghosts and allocating ghosts when they come out of the deck, allocating ghosts to the corners, I'm going to be exercising more often in the corners anyway. So I want my good tiles to be there. Regardless of if you're playing red or not, you can always have the neutral ability to fly. So you can use that neutral token to fly somewhere if you have to. No space is ever too far away that you can't get there from across the board with the ability to fly. So for me, because exercising 2 ghosts at one time is such a big opportunity, I always put my high value target tiles on the corners as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll get to general. We've been weaving in gameplay tips. You can't kind of have this conversation without
exactly.
But we'll get to focusing on the gameplay in a second. Let's talk characters. You mentioned the red dude. What is the better side? So the one side allows you to just fly across the board. Basically, you can move to any space. And then the other side, you can move another player one space. What's the better one for multiplayer?
For multiplayer, I think the ability to move another character one usually works better because if you're playing multiplayer, somebody else can cover that thing that's all the way across the board that you need to get to, right? So I usually like to be able to push somebody. If you're playing it solo or with two players, I basically say no one should ever play red. That should always be a neutral token ability. So somebody that needs to jump across the board, and you always put it on the fly side for the neutral player token. I just don't think anybody should ever play red in a low player count situation.
Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate.
I mean, hey, people have loyalties to colors too, but that's one of those things that is it's situational, right? Because you don't always need to travel far. And B, that's something that you want everybody to be able to do in a 1 or 2 player game. So you want that as a neutral ability. It's one of those that's too good not to share. You know what I mean? Right.
Okay, so let's get to green. So one side of green allows you to roll 3 dice and re-roll those dice. When you're exercising, you can also re-roll the curse die. One side asks you can roll 4 dice, and you could skip rolling the curse die in certain situations. So which one do you prefer there?
100% the not rolling a curse die. Okay. You just load up the green board with all your black tormentor ghosts, and they have no effect whatsoever. It's huge to be able to ignore those rolls because they're not haunting. You can leave them there. You know what I mean? Because arguably tormentors can be just as devastating or more devastating than haunters, depending on the dice rolls, right? But if you can completely ignor them, barring a board filling up, I think that's pretty huge. So for me, the better side is the ignore the curse side.
The tormentors, to be clear, are the monsters that they have the center stone of the curse die, so they roll the black die every round.
Exactly.
If they're not on the green die. So that's another one that's a little bit, people go back and forth because they like the side where you can re-roll the 3 dice. Being able to re-roll 3 dice is better than just rolling 4. So
for sure.
And then people kind of argue back and forth like, come on, this is math here.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to bring in the math of the tormentor die because you don't know how often you're going to get stuck with those. But what I think that is overlooked is that it actually frees up some other decisions, right? So if I have a tormentor that I have to address that's not on my green board with the ignore the tormentor side, now all of a sudden it's forcing my hand where it wasn't before. So I can certainly see the value. I mean, green's a solid player. You can't really go wrong adding green to your mix because it's your power player. It can roll by, it can knock things out, etc. But the effect it has on your overall strategy to ignore tormentors for me is too big to ignore.
Mm-hmm. Let's get to blue. The blue player is the character that can either use a space and then attack in the same round, or they can do 2 of a thing. They can attack twice, or they can nail the space they're on twice. What do you prefer there?
Well, I'm super guilty of showing a color preference here. I love blue, but it also, to me, is along with maybe green, is the number one choice for low player counts. Personally, I like the ability to be able to use the villager and the exorcism as opposed to doing one twice. So I like the Heavenly Gust side to choose both. I have seen, I'm a student of ghost stories, so I've seen plenty of articles that say, hey, being able to exercise twice is better if you fail. Being able to grab both Buddhas with that second wind is better than the other choice. I've just found in my own personal experience that your strategies open up a lot more if you can move, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna change the I'm gonna stop by the herbalist shop and grab some and then exercise. Grab some tokens and exercise. Like I just think it opens up more strategy choices. So for me, I always go with Heavenly Gust. Mm-hmm. I'm not hard and fast on that one though.
I think that that is the case where the corner is like putting the best tiles in the corner is really, really good because you can go in the corner, you can use whatever it is, like either change the circle of prayer or get more DOS tokens, and then you attack both 2 creatures because you can attack from the corners. So in that particular case, I think it's better to put it on the corners. I actually prefer putting it on the best tiles on the side, so I make kind of a plus sign as opposed to the X because of the advantage that it gives you for movement, and I don't use the attack user thing. I pretty much always go for the double because I think it's just I just think it's so good to just first turn, boom, Buddha Buddha.
Oh, absolutely.
So
so
that's
what's neat about that is that speaks to the fact that there are more than one viable strategy, right?
Yeah.
And you definitely highlighted the fact that I love Heavenly Gust because I put things in the corners and I do both at the same time. Like, that's exactly what I do.
I'm wondering, like, the corner things? Okay, that's why.
Yep.
Cool.
For sure.
Yeah, I pretty much always use Bang Bang. I just love having those Buddhas, and the second turn I can get both of them out there, pretty quickly. I don't have to like split up like I just give okay, you blue player, you are on Buddhas. If you see two Buddhas in the middle, do not pass go. Just go get them and work it out.
For sure. And I think for beginner strategy, and I'm not saying yours is like the less advanced strategy, but I am saying for a beginner, being able to just do that double. Because now you have at least one singular mission, right? Like if I see that, I'm going to grab that. And it's also fun because you get to just blow stuff up. Like that ghost is gone because of what I did, right? Mm-hmm. So even though it's a very single-minded purpose, it's a fun purpose because you're just torching stuff, right? Yeah. So it's a cool beginner strategy.
And it's really effective.
Yeah, exactly. Beginner with an asterisk. I don't mean it's a less effective or less advanced, but it's easy to implement an effective strategy.
And now we get to my favorite color, which is yellow. So the yellow, you can either get one Dao token of your choice at the beginning of the turn, or you can get this weakened token, and the weakened token lasts the entire round against a creature. So the weakened token kind of subtracts one from the colors you need to defeat the monster. So it makes things, if something's a 2, now it needs 1 to kill, or whatever it is. Okay, so I know my preference. I'm a pretty strong one, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, so to me, this depends on if you are playing it actively or if you're using it as a support character. So for me, if it's a neutral character, then you want it on the enfeeblement side because you want to be able to put that there for the whole round, right? You want to be able to, if I screw up this time, that's still enfeebled until I finally kill it. So it's a clear choice for your neutral tokens. And then as the player, I flip it where you just have bottomless pockets and you just accrue stuff over the course of the whole game. So to me, it depends on how you're using it. If you're active, bottomless pockets. If you're not, enfeeblement.
I play solo a lot. I just get bottomless pockets for the DAOs. I love having every token.
Yeah, exactly.
A completely empty bank. It's playing
if you are the active player, yeah, for sure. And so so basically my one strong recommendation for solo players is to not play red, because I think it's useful to be able to fly occasionally, but the other ones have such strong reasons to be able to play them. The extra actions, and you can argue that moving twice is an extra action. It certainly has its value, but for blue, the extra actions. For green, being able to ignore the Tormentor dice, and for yellow, just for being just a boss with this army of tokens at your behest. Like I think those three all work for solo play.
All right, so let us get to. Oh, and just to comment about multiplayer, I think if you're playing with the entire complement, all 4, then that enfeeble token can really help. You just put on the strongest monster, the monster you just really, really need to get down. Sometimes in the multiplayer game, there's a lot going on, but there's usually like a monster or two that you can identify, be like, okay, that one has to die. That one right there.
Yep, absolutely.
There's no other. And
sometimes it might just be also, you survey the board and you see, wow, 0 people have any blue tokens. All right, I'm going to hit this, even though it's only a 2 blue monster, like nobody can pay to kill this thing, so I'm going to hit that guy with an enfeeblement token just because nobody can kill this effectively.
That's a really good point. Okay, and it's positionless. So like if you take Dao tokens, it depends on where you are. But if you put the feeble token, go anywhere. So that's another thing speaking to that effect.
For sure.
Okay, so in terms of actual tactics on the board, there's I think the biggest mistake, the biggest thing that makes me wince when it comes to watching a Ghost Stories player is when a player rolls and they need 2 or more colors to beat a monster, and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna go over here and take care of that, and oh wait, oops.
Right. Yeah, you have to be confident that you're gonna win. You can't waste actions in this game or you just lose. There's certain scenarios where you're really close to decking out, like Wu Fang's already on the board and you get some monsters that are coming along, or maybe you just need to get this token back. Like, there's a few scenarios where you would gamble, but for the most part, if you need to roll 2 or more tokens, you shouldn't be doing it. You should be out collecting tokens or doing something else. I completely agree with you.
Right. Yeah. I think if you like, needing 1 is probably your safe spot. And even then, make sure it's like green has a better chance to get it, or something like that. Like, or the blue one that can attack twice or whatever. Even just a straight naked roll, like if you're just red and you're rolling, that's even suboptimal. I mean, red I see as a total support character. What I do with red is I have him gather a ton of herbalist from the herbalist shop and just be at the place so that when another player attacks, they can share that common pool of tokens. I think a lot of also players don't realize that you can, if 2 people are on a tile when an attack happens, you can share both of your Dow tokens. So it's like having a common pool. So like having red just kind of gather tokens and being where the better attackers can be a pretty good use for red.
Absolutely. And not only do some people not realize that, but they don't realize the value of it. Because like you were saying, you want to make sure you can kill stuff, because wasting a turn where you decide not to petition a villager and you're going to exercise instead, and then you fail, that is gutting. So, I mean, it does so much damage to the whole game flow. So it does take the special kind of player that like loves to play the healer all the time in your parties, right? Like that's basically that's me. Yeah. I mean, that's a true red support player to like just go around, fly around, be wherever you need him to be with some tokens. But it's a great player to be, if you like that kind of role of like just being an awesome support. Mm-hmm. There's actually a really, depending on where your comfortability is with probability, right? There are some really cool resources available on BGG that just give you the whole probability table. And I'm not going to say
in the show notes.
Oh yeah, awesome. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say that there's like a certain cutoff, like below this line, never do. But it is nice to see like, okay, if I need 1 and I have 2 dice and a reroll, how close am I to do this, right? And then you can start to do some more accurate risk assessment of like, all right, I'm close to the end of the deck, so I'm going to gamble on this like 60%, right? That's a little more help for players that are trying to figure out what to do with this attack time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in terms of more kind of concrete strategy stuff, how do you approach using Circle of Prayer? So there's a school of thought that says, okay, let's just, put something if you have the spare action, but really it's important to be able to use Circle of Prayer, which is that tile that gives you the free, a free token to defeat stuff. Use it like if you see a bunch of a thing and then just like change, make sure that is changed. And there's some people that say, okay, the black cards tend to be really the worst. So just, as soon as you can, just set it to black and just wait for the guy that locks tiles or some terrible monster to come out and just do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of a hybrid of the two, right? There comes a time when your entire red board is filled with ghosts and you have 2 red ghosts elsewhere on the board, and you just need to get some work done. And so switch it over to red, start cleaning up your board. But for the most part, as like a default, if I need to just put something there, always default to black. Mm-hmm. So I sort of am somewhere in between, where if you watch my games, I would say, I don't know, 60, 70% of the time it's sitting there on black. And then all of a sudden my board is just looking distraught, and I'll swing over, and for me, I always put it again on the corner. That's when I put on the corner. So I go to that corner. I've made sure to put 2 ghosts there. I switch my token and I try to kill 2 ghosts in that corner. Again, that's just the difference in how you and I play, because it gets me access to more ghosts, because I'm always playing blue so I can attack twice, right?
Right.
So go to the corner, switch my token, attack 2 things, and leave it there as long as I can. But for the most part, if you just have to guess, if you happen to be on that token or whatever, or that tile, just guess black.
Mm-hmm. About, I guess, like 70% of the time it's black?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sitting on black most of the game, and it's always, and it's gonna do you a service. It's gonna take care of some just awful, nasty ghosts. All the most debilitating ones are black. So it'll certainly benefit you. Even if it stayed there the whole game, it would still benefit you. Just every once in a while, you have to assess the board and be like, man, just this alone could straight up kill 2 red ghosts and then get me down to 1 token for a third. sometimes it can do much more work if you're willing to change it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's the general tips. I mean, again, these tips will not guarantee you a win. They won't even guarantee you get to 50% through the deck. They just kind of give you the best chance over multiple plays. So you're not doing like egregiously stupid things and kind of sinking your game. Do you have any other particular tips that you think that people should know?
Yes. The big one for me is to be cognizant of what you have to use. So if you have chi and you have the yin yang token, use it. They are currency. Use them, especially if you see a ghost with a reward coming up. Okay, a lot of people tend to be afraid of the bigger ghosts. If they're not haunting or tormenting, if they're just a big ghost, they might let them hang out. For me, no way. I like to go get that reward and kind of try to chain victories together, right? So I'll knock that out. It'll give me my chi token back, and I'll use that chi token on this tile. So don't be afraid to use that currency. That yin yang and those chi tokens are meant to be used. So make sure you use them before you get those rewards back.
Mm-hmm. How early in the game do you generally use your yin yang token?
As soon as I find it necessary. I don't feel the need to not have it. I mean, if there's a tile I like that got haunted, I'll use it on the third turn. If it got haunted on the third turn, I'll use it right away because it's going to come back. I feel like it's held as too much of this sacred thing, and people are afraid to use it. But as soon as you find that you might have the need for it, go ahead and use it. Now, does that mean like as soon as your first tile gets haunted, use it right away? No, definitely not. You can find ways to get that tile back. But if you need that tile, if it's a tile you love, if your Buddha tile gets haunted, then go ahead and use that thing right away.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else?
That'll do it, man. Use your currency.
So we sincerely hope that we have helped you improve your play in Ghost Stories. Thank you very much, Mike, for taking the time, filling in and letting us know how you approach the game.
Oh, thank you. I'm sitting here grinning this whole time. I love this game. I love talking about it. So thank you for having me. I'm serious. I've been grinning this entire time we've been talking.
It's funny when I'll ask a designer to come on and talk about their own games and like, okay, all right, this is cool. Depending on where they are in the development process, they may hate their game.
In there.
But when they talk about a game that they truly love, like if I'd have had the same conversation about Arkham Horror, then it'd be like, okay, here we go.
Yep. Oh, that's another favorite, man. That's what got me into gaming. So I love that one too.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Hey, love having me. Love having me? Love being on.
We swear we're not drinking.
Yeah, I do not swear.
That is so funny. All right. I really hope that you guys got some tips, some tricks. So yeah, it's a hard game. Even with every single thing that you do right in that game, you're gonna get hosed over half the time, especially if you play on like a normal mode or whatever it is. And if you play with that standard rule, which is randomized, like, again, like we mentioned for the segment, there's a lot of, people that just say you have to randomize. That's what it says in the rules. And I'm a little bit more flexible with that, but so that was Ghost Stories. To this day, I love it. I can't see myself not playing this game. It'll be 10, 15 years from now. When my kid's old enough, I'm going to say, let's play some Ghost Stories. It's that good for me.
I like it. I like it a lot. I just cannot beat it. So.
All right. So that is going to be the episode. Again, lots and lots of co-ops. Anthony is loading up a pure Euros episode. So you guys just wait.
It's coming. I promise. All the Euro lovers. We're not abandoning you.
It is.
All right. So like Jason said, that's everything for this week. Make sure you check out the website, everynightisgamenight.com. Has all the episodes, all the show notes, all the special Kickstarter preview episodes. They're all there. You can also check us out on Facebook, the Every Night is Game Night Facebook page, as well as Twitter at ENGN_podcast. And that is going to be everything for this week. So until next time, go ahead and grab a solo game off the shelf, and let's make every night game night.
Later, everybody.